And some of the things that stand out from organizations that really supported me was, number one, when an organization took the time to get to know me really well on a personal level from the interview stage. They would have learned that family comes first for me before anything else. And second, they would have learned that I'm I'll call it elite amateur triathlete. I compete in the sport of triathlon. It's part of my lifestyle. It requires training about 15 hours a week. And really, I do it because this is the best thing for my mental health. I love the sport. And when organizations have taken the time to learn this about me and then remember it and show me that they care about that throughout my employment with them, it has meant the world. I had one organization that I worked with. They would regularly check in with me. Hey, you've been working late recently. You've been putting in hours overtime. Are you okay doing this? Maybe you're very tired from your training. Maybe you're missing dinner time with your husband. Just making sure that my work experience, given the context of my life, was still working for me. Just even having someone reach out, ask those questions, someone who's asked me how my races have been, stuff like that, has been hugely beneficial to my mental health. And then the other thing I would say is, I've worked for organizations before that have had dedicated mental health days every quarter for their employees. That's not a common thing, but I think we're seeing it more and more. And I think that when companies do that and make that offering to their entire organization, it really shows that they know that a little extra time off here and there goes such a long way for people. It's the best way for them to recharge, spend some time with their families that maybe they weren't getting during the busy work week. And also it's a great way to come back from this period. For 2 years, we didn't really see our colleagues. We also didn't really see our families. We were really isolated socially. And so now that companies are thinking about things like this and giving these opportunities, I think it just shows that they understand what their employees need to be happy in this present day. These things seem to be different for different organizations too. Like, I recruit in tech, and the things that when I'm helping place a candidate at an organization in a tech role, I'll always ask them what's important to you from a culture standpoint that's going to make your well-being in the workplace just the best it can be. And it's funny, those answers are usually different than what I get from folks in marketing or just people in at different points in their career. So it's not one size fits all, certainly. I think that there's so many types of workplaces that everyone should be able to find somewhere, again, where the values align enough that the employer will see that that's a really special thing about you. And you've put yourself out there to say, this is what I bring to the table and these are my limitations. And while I am on working for you, you're going to get the best out of me. But the best out of me also is going to come from respecting what I need to recharge in my time off. I think I really just want to emphasize that I think everybody's needs are different. And if companies and employers will make the investment to offer different wellness benefits that will appeal to a range of employees, they're going to have better employee retention long-term. They're going to create a safer, more welcoming culture. And ultimately, while it may be an investment and it may take a little bit of more work on their end, I think they can really build a reputation for themselves of being a wonderful workplace that does put employees first. And that you will never be a workplace that puts employees first if you have a one-size-fits-all culture or wellness approach that doesn't take into consideration the many, many different types of individuals in this world, different types of personalities, different family situations, religion, hobbies, and all these things. As we all know, like, every single human is different. And so it just continues to blow my mind when I see employers not take that into consideration for ultimately one of the most important things in the workplace, which is employee wellness.
One year when I was helping my sweet mom transition into assisted living, and it was very taxing, and she was incredibly scared. So I needed to be there for my mom so that she could call me anytime. And I had a leader who was very understanding of that and understood that this was very important to me, but that I would still get the work done. So there was no question that anytime I was up from my desk and going to answer the phone to speak to my mom, she was fine with it. She knew that the work would get done and that I would let her know if I needed help or needed extra time or anything like that, which I never did because I wanted to do the work. I wanted to meet the expectations set for me and exceed those. And I wanted to do good by someone who gave me the freedom to have that flexibility. When I have a leader or an environment where my colleagues and my peers or my leader also has her own or his own well-being at the forefront of their mind as well, then they're a better leader for me. So when, for example, my boss at a major corporate job that I had not too long ago, she took care of herself and her family so she could then be a better leader for me, and it set the example that I could do the same, and therefore we all got our work done definitely on time and exceeded our expectations because she set that example and she set that tone that was the kind of work environment she wanted to create, and therefore we all worked extra hard.
And this is part of the experience at Gowling WLG is we developed a mental health and wellness strategy. And the strategy had three components to it: awareness, resilience, and empowerment. And then we developed programs that would align with the strategy. And ultimately, we can develop a culture that is based on trust. Creating that culture starts with leaders throughout the organization. Leaders need to prioritize mental health and awareness and the mental wellness of people within the organization. Leaders, if they're willing to do it, also need to be vulnerable, but vulnerable in an authentic way. They need to model the message that it's okay to not be okay. And they need to ensure that there is a safe, non-judgmental environment for people to begin to talk to each other about how they're feeling.
So my work has positively impacted my life in many, many ways. I think I would have to start from the beginning where I'm an immigrant. I'm Polish American and my whole family is back in Europe. I have received a contract letter of employment. And I saw there like not enough days off for me to really travel back and visit my family, and I was negotiating additional days versus additional pay, and they totally understood that I am traveling to see my family at least once a year, and they were on board, and I did receive additional days, so that was fantastic for me. Also, how they're supporting me through the fact that I'm an immigrant and my family is very far from here. For an example, my mom is coming in for Christmas and she'll be here only 2 weeks. So I really fully want to be engaged with her and have the time to spend with her. My boss is fully supporting this and letting me work remotely, and that really is helping my well-being.
So working for NAB, the National Australia Bank, there's a number of things that they do to support our wellbeing. We've got access to a system called My Coach. So through NAB, we have access to free mental welfare and mental health support that they use. So we contact that service. They'll take us off whatever role we're in. So if you're on the phone in the call centre, I coach bankers. So I'm able to take time out from that to speak to my coach and deal with anything that I have to deal with. And obviously it's a fairly high stress job, and with a high stress family life outside of that, I've made 1 or 2 calls to them myself. Incredible service, they always follow up. So the relationship with my coach from NAB is sensational. Our people advisory centre or colleague connectors in our call, so our own internal HR department, again, also very supportive. First thing they'll do is direct you to my coach. If you're not comfortable there, they'll help you find external help. But just the other things that our leadership does. So we don't have managers, but now we have leaders. You can see a massive difference between managing people and leading people. And we do a distinctive leadership program. So anyone who manages or leads other people doesn't have distinctive leadership. And distinctive leadership for us can look like a range of things. And when it comes to supporting your people, you've maybe got maximum 7 people who you lead. There's no excessively large teams being led by people. So the people leader can certainly take a vested interest in all their people. And through the distinctive leadership program, they offer that they do that. Every leader I've had at NAB is certainly very encouraging in opening up dialogue around mental health and how you're managing workload, how you're managing home life, how your work-life balance actually is. NAB's exceptionally good with flexible working arrangements. So work from home, if you're not in a role that requires you to work a certain shift, so being in a branch, 9:30 to 4, or being on the phone in the call centre for your 8-hour shift, I've got quite a bit of flexibility in what I do. So I evaluate bankers' phone calls. So my leader doesn't care whether I'm doing that at 10 o'clock in the morning or whether I'm doing that at 10 o'clock at night. So long as I'm getting through my workload, whatever suits me and what's best for me and my family life is what he encourages. So they're really good. And things as simple as, getting messages at 10 o'clock, hey guys, it's a beautiful day outside on your lunch break. Make sure you go out and get some sun and get some fresh air, refresh yourself. The distinctive leadership model that NAB follows, it really is supportive of your mental health. Certainly the best environment I've ever been in for my mental health. Just little things that make a world of difference to their staff and their staff retention. And considering where I came from at NAB, so through direct consumer servicing, that's the base role that I came into, and how most people enter the bank who don't have a finance background, who can't apply for group 3, 4, and 5 roles. That's a pretty high stress job. It's very full on. It's 8 hours on the phones, non-stop, back to back. Customers who are frustrated, they're occasionally abusive. They take it out on you. You're just a representative of the bank, but at the end of the day, people take it out on you. And our leaders understand that, and they're really good with it. Really supportive. It's the type of role where you need supportive, defined, clear leadership with a lot of care for mental health. And we can tell when we're doing it right because our retention of new staff, when we've got that right, is significantly better than the times where we weren't running distinctive leadership, just before COVID happened. When COVID first started, the focus on mental health probably wasn't there, and banker retention for bankers coming in through the COVID period was terrible. So we moved pretty quickly with the times through that period of people having to work from home. And the change was almost instant, from 30% retention loss to 4. So the focus shifted, and people felt valued even though they weren't able to come into the office. And colleague engagement in the office, now that we're able to go back, is something NAB's also massive on. And I am too, personally. I think from my personal viewpoint, I don't see working from home when you don't have people around you, colleagues around you, people you can bounce ideas off, people you can, celebrate the wins and also, discuss the negatives with. When you are just at home, you're not around your colleagues and your team all the time, you just don't have that human interaction. It's massively detrimental for a lot of personalities' mental health. There are some personalities who thrive in that environment. It's the way they like to work. But I think for myself and for the vast majority, isolation doesn't do anyone's mental health any favours. NAB's hugely encouraging of colleague engagement and making sure we stay interactive. And when we did start to be able to come back into the office, it was, I want to say mandated, but it hasn't been overly officiated, but it was mandated that we at least come back in 2 days a week each for those who do work from home, and make sure that at least one of those days your leader sets up that your whole team is there. So you spend at least one day engaging with everyone. And that seems to work okay. But for me personally, I never really went home during COVID. My mental health went downhill pretty quickly because of it. So even though there are only 7 or 8 of us in the office, it was 7 or 8 people that I could see in my workspace every day, and my routine didn't have to change, and I was able to lock into work mode when I got to the building, and just having that 7 or 8 colleagues to bounce off and just see how their lives are going, listen to how other people were dealing with what was a pretty hectic time was was really good. So NAB backed anyone who was in my boat to do the exact same thing. Obviously working within restrictions and 20 people to a space and 4 people to a square metre or 4 square metres to a person, whatever it was. But yeah, no, they were really good.
I think from past experience, I've had a couple of very good experiences with employers where they've actually had structured programs, so they deliver information and education on if things aren't going right in your life or you're needing some help, there's some people to reach out to. So whether it's websites or a phone line or people within the business that you can talk to, which I think is really healthy and really wonderful. One of my experiences was within a team building exercise where it was a regional conference and we were away for a couple of days. And during one of the team building projects, one of the facilitators actually went to my boss and said, I can see that Mish is really struggling with what's going on. Like there's something there, she's holding back. And I actually think I can really help her. So for me, I had a very proactive boss at that stage who took all that on board and made all the inquiries and got all the approvals that she needed to get. And I ended up getting, I think, 5 sessions with this facilitator who basically changed my life. So, and I don't just say that as a throwaway line. He was absolutely amazing. I just recently lost my father. I was dealing with a lot of grief. I was quite angry and resentful, and during those 5 sessions we worked through a lot of different types of things and had lots of different discussions. He gave me lots of exercises to do. I think I saw him over a period of 5 or 6 months, so it wasn't just an intensive couple of weeks, get it done, get it out. There was strategy in what was done, and from that I ended up gaining a promotion and actually being able to leave Australia and travel overseas, and then move on to one of the best experiences I've had in my life, working in another country on a global team, and really getting to experience what that was all about. So that was one of the most amazing experiences that I've had with an employer actually looking after their employees' mental health and stepping in and helping rather than just letting them drown.
I'm a cancer survivor, and so back in 2014 I had to go through chemo treatment, and then and that time my husband just finished his PhD, and he started looking for a job, and he found a job, and we needed to be relocated in south of San Francisco, and we live at that time in Davis. And so my work is in Davis. And so for us to move there, it's either I'm going to lose my job or lose my job, find another job. And I'm very blessed that we have another station actually across where my husband would relocate. And at that time, I was telling my manager that, oh, my husband got a job, we need to be relocated in this area. And he said, okay, we have a station there, so I would like you to make a proposal on how you want this to be done. Basically, I have my team in Woodland, I have my work in Woodland in Davis area, and yet I'll be working in this station. How will then I plan to do this type of work? And at that time, 2015, remote work, the word remote work doesn't exist yet, right? And so maybe I would say I was one of the many people that started experiencing remote work. And I don't know how my proposal, my direct manager was very supportive of me. And we are about to present to my manager's manager, basically the lead of our team, about my future work situation. Before I could even present to our lead my proposal, she already knew what's gonna happen to my work. Because, you know, when you're in the seed industry and you work close to Davis, University of Davis, it's a very small world, and they know you know everybody, right? And so my manager's manager knew my husband's PI, and so she knew then what's going on before I could even tell her. And at that time, before I could say, hey, I would like to present to you my proposal for my future work scenario, she already said, sure, of course you can move there. We have a station there, you can move there. And so they were able to support my relocation based on my personal need and not based on the business need. And so that for me really took a big, what do you call that? Like, heavy load in my shoulder, because that was like, I don't know what's gonna happen with my work. Should I like gonna look for a new job, which I wasn't ready because I just get out of my chemo treatment and there's so much things going on. And for them to support me on that, it was I was so blessed and very fortunate, and it took a lot of burden in my shoulder, and I continued to work for the same company until now.
The first thing that comes to mind is professional development organizations or professional development activities, excuse me, that employees can participate in during the day that don't involve them necessarily spending time away from their family if it's avoidable, things that will actually contribute to one's ability to do one's job effectively. Chances to stretch beyond one's current role and maybe do some interdisciplinary work or do work with parts of the organization that one doesn't normally have any connection with can also be very rewarding, and again, make me feel like, okay, I've got opportunities. I'm not just pigeonholed into this one role that I can never get out of. I can do some of these things and know they will actually be beneficial, not only to me, but to my organization as well, is one thing. I think another thing employers can do, organizations can do, is recognize that people need time sometimes away from their daily tasks to take a breather. I'm specifically thinking about COVID and the mental health effects that have come out of COVID and our isolation for a few years. And that even though we're back to work full force, we may not be back mentally yet. People may be still struggling a little bit with the repercussions of that isolation and the repercussions of shifting back and forth very abruptly between working from home and working in an office. I guess a little bit more flexibility with the human side of the employees or the personal side of the employees. Not that I'm suggesting people be allowed to not do their jobs. I'm suggesting a little bit more grace, perhaps, around those kinds of occasions. One of the things I particularly like about what I do is I am 100% free to set my own schedule and prioritize my workload the way I think it should be prioritized and not have it be prioritized by someone else or someone higher up in the organization. And that gives me tremendous job satisfaction. That sense of control, an absence of micromanaging because of the way the organization is structured. Those are things that I think can really enhance an employee's mental health. Just knowing that there's not this other level of, I need to be doing this at this precise moment. I mean, sometimes that's inevitable, but being able to control a little bit one's work situation, whether that means working from home some days, whether that means having an office rather than a cubicle, I think goes a long way.
I would say even, before COVID-19 and the pandemic really put even more stressors on people, mental health and well-being were always valued at, a past company where I worked, where they, really spent time providing opportunities for us as employees to, have one-on-one support, to have a non-biased person that we could, trusted person that we could really speak to talk about our needs, to have that engagement from not just our direct managers, but other people within the company and access to people within the company that were there dedicated to serving us and serving our needs, our well-being needs as employees, and making that a priority for the company. Because I've definitely experienced the negative side of things too, where there is no communication, there's no follow through on feedback loops, there's a disconnect with what employees are asking for and needing. And I think it's really impactful when there are programs in place and people in place to serve those needs of the employees, and making trainings, onboarding trainings and continuing education trainings for employees, having dedicated days at work that are about mental health and well-being, days where you can connect outside of work, if that's available to you in your company, whether it's after hours or a retreat, something that kind of enhances your continual learning, a connection to purpose, right? So I think making sure that your experience is not just about your day-to-day tasks and responsibilities, but it's why you're here, bringing purpose and passion and life and creativity into your daily work. And that's something that I've really, really appreciated in past roles, where I can bring myself, I can bring my interests and my passions and my skill sets into enhancing or improving something about the company that maybe was lacking or an area of growth. So if you can kind of leverage your talent and make them feel that they can contribute in meaningful ways, I think that is another level of, meaningful work, purposeful work, not just a great benefits package, which is also, appreciated. But yeah, I think just finding the purpose, the passion, the creativity, and nurturing that within your employees to make them feel valued and that they can add value to your company as well.
I had another situation recently with, because of some changes, she's now my direct supervisor. Before that, she was my boss's boss. But she and I are kind of similar in the way we approach work and the organization. And I had, again, reached out with just some frustration on something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And I said, I almost was going to cry about it. And she said, don't, I've already cried all the tears. So again, being met with empathy and I've been told in the past that I'm too sensitive, and I hate that language because sensitivity is a gift. But I'm finding that I currently get to work with people who don't see sensitivity as a bad thing. And I've been met with empathy, and then, here's how we're going to take the right action. And I think that's a hard balance to find. I think a lot of people are strong in empathy or action. So the fact that I've experienced both at the same time is really helpful.
They have, well, I'll expand on what I was saying, they organized retreats, and it was really nice to just feel supported about the work that we do, and it made us feel good about the work that we do. And it was an unstructured retreat. It was not team building. It helped us just hang out, which is actually just really important to bond with your coworkers. So that is one way that they did that.
I thrive, and I love the conversation that, this Real Talk is about thriving, which is, the next level of not just engagement or employee experience, it's thriving. And I truly have felt like I've thrived in past, roles that I've had where I can connect with other people. There's face-to-face interaction. I can lead an initiative that hasn't, that's brand new. I can impact the company to bring some joy, infusing joy and happiness and connection with your employees and your peers. You never know what connections can be made, what new initiatives can be started, new ideas are generated when you connect on a human level with people. So I've really loved when I've had those opportunities to drive a new initiative, to extend my learning, to learn from other people. Learning is part of what, if you're really at a job that makes you feel valued and that you want to commit your time and your effort and your energy to, you want to feel that you're still being challenged and you're able to grow. So I think when I felt the most valued and connected is when I've been able to do that in past companies and develop mentorships and peer relationships, those things that are more intangible, outside of a 401k or outside of a walk run or outside of, other things that are wonderful to have in a well-being strategy. It's those intangible things, human connection, growth, continuous learning, that makes an impact for long-term retention of employees. Like your top talent, you want to keep those people in your company. Those are the things that I have felt have kept me at roles in the past.
I definitely need recognition. My current role is more of a coordinator, facilitator, kind of supportive role, and my job is to make the team successful. There are times when I feel like I do something really cool that makes a difference, and I don't always feel like I get that immediate recognition. I'm trying not to take it personally. I think that's something in general that there's room for improvement in our collective workplace and specifically in mine. I think finding ways to meaningfully recognize people, understanding that, I might need a compliment in our Teams channel and someone else might need a $10 Starbucks gift card. So I think that's part of the challenge for corporations is when you have a diverse workforce, how do you set up a meaningful recognition program that really kind of gets at the core of all the different personality types and needs that you have?
Things I need to feel good and happy at work are clear direction. If there's going to be a team effort and a project and a shared goal, like putting on an event, it's really good to have direction about like, okay, here's the overall goal. And then we distribute the roles amongst everybody. Who wants to do what? How's that going to contribute to the goal? Is your work going to line up with the other person's work at the right time? So a lot of clear direction and a lot of self-awareness, I think, really helps, because I've had a few, I wouldn't say miscommunication or communication issues, but I can get a sense of when people are wired a little bit differently than I am. I'm more relational. I'm more design work around people and expectations. And then I've encountered people who are more kind of systems thinkers. And we all have the same shared goal, but they speak about things differently than I do, even if it's the same goal. So self-awareness about how to kind of communicate in a more co-created kind of way, or I should say just like being really clear about understanding each other, helps me feel good about the work I do, helps me feel like I'm supporting teammates and vice versa. So I think communication and clear direction with goal setting is really important.
Because we didn't have that opportunity that we used to have in the offices. We weren't able to get together and have those water cooler conversations and just touch base on how the footy went on the weekend. The normality of life was gone. And I think that with that, a lot of businesses and a lot of companies undervalue how important work can be for a person's mental health socially. NAB thankfully didn't. So that first 2 weeks was hard, but when they started making changes that were live, reacting to what they were getting from their staff, from their people, that was massive. That worked for me. I got straight back into the office as soon as I realised how bad I was struggling. And yeah, the support was incredible. Really, really good.
Another perspective was, I've worked in some awful places where the employers haven't done anything, and they've actually let poor mental health fester and not only affect the employee, but the employees around that employee as well. and in sour the entire culture, which is very, it's really difficult because every day you're going into a pretty terrible, toxic workplace where you've got miserable people. They're not feeling supported. There are no outlets or places for them to connect and improve and get better. I saw a lot of people in that environment that had so much potential that with a little bit of kindness and a little bit of help, professional help, could be moving on to much bigger and better things and actually outputting a whole lot more than they're currently doing, because the output that they were giving was actually really negative and was affecting the company performance. So within that company, the support that the employees were given was through HR. And it was actually very well known in the building that if you spoke to HR, within minutes, it was reported back to your boss. So you actually couldn't have a confidential conversation and get the help or some direction without knowing that that was going to be fed back, out of confidence, I guess. So through that business, there was a real sense of unhappiness and uneasiness and persecution as well, I guess.
One of the things that is particularly challenging and has been challenging for the past number of years, and I've noticed this trend maybe for the last 5 years or so, is the fact that there's an increasing pressure to do absolutely everything we can for students without taking into account what employees are experiencing in the workplace and outside of the workplace. So, that lack of work-life balance, the expectation to be on call 24 hours a day via email, for example, I think is really draining because it doesn't allow us to rest. And speaking for myself, I'm the kind of person who really needs mental rest. And being required to devote a bigger and bigger part of my day to activities that are not part of my job description can be very stressful. It is very stressful. That's the biggest thing I notice. Not giving people opportunities to be heard, not making sure that employees are appropriately compensated for the work they're doing, really restricting the way PTO can be used. What comes up is just there's a lot of little things that individually might not be a big deal, but when you put them all together are really not good, I think, for employees' mental health. I think about the situation that how it's different for me versus staff where I'm teaching, and staff really don't get treated all that well. They are micromanaged and they are expected to be on call outside of their hours, and their PTO is very limited. It's all the things I was just saying. Their situation is so different. I can understand why there's burnout. I feel like it's not very equitable treatment among the different classes of employees.
I've worked in organizations where there's a lot of disconnect. Everyone seems to be taking care of their own agenda, and it's not at the expense of someone else or anyone else per se, but they do seem to kind of have blinders on, like they do what they need to do for them. And if other people are kind of left in the lurch, they're kind of on their own and they have to catch up or something like that. And so there's disconnect, there's lack of communication. And that's tough because it challenges my mental health, because you start second guessing yourself, or am I not working hard enough, or do they just not notice? And so, yeah, it doesn't feel good to second guess things like that. I was going to expand on that by just saying that I've ended up feeling, underutilized, in those ways. Because if everyone can do what they need to do for themselves on their own, in their own time, then there is no teamwork. and then you start questioning the larger company as a whole. Okay, what are we all doing? What are we all supposed to be moving towards? So there's a lack of, it reduces the morale, and so that's been challenging as well. I've worked in places where someone I'm working for asks me to do something, but they just kind of point to the end goal. They don't really tell me how it could be done or should be done or where to start or what the resources are involved. And they're not clear about timelines, deadlines, and you're just kind of on your own. And then they're just constantly checking in with you about the finish line. Is it done yet? Is it done yet? And you're just like, no, of course not, because we haven't fleshed out any of these things. So that's been challenging. And I'm just trying to think, there's probably another example behind that. Yeah, there is a middle ground definitely needed. I've worked on both sides of where someone has just pointed to the finish line, or I've been micromanaged, or there's kind of been both. And that's what I was getting at when I said that they just keep pointing to the finish line and then coming to me, is it done yet? Is it done yet? And I'm like, no, I'm still figuring out apparently all the pieces that you didn't know were involved. So that has challenged my mental health as well. But yeah.
Challenge their mental health is promotion, right? Like we talk about that, and everybody wants to be promoted, of course. Everybody wants to develop, and for other company, it's not an issue, or it's not challenging, or it's not difficult. But in my organization, in my career experience, it has been difficult in the last, I would say, 10 years. It wasn't hard when I started in my first 2 years with the company, but I think, I'm not sure if it's also in America that is harder to get, because a lot of people here are competitive. So I feel like when I moved here in North America, development has been harder or challenging. And it's not just me. I hear this same situation with my other colleagues, with friends in the same organization. And so for me, it's the development has been always, I feel like, giving me stress, like asking, well, the development is okay. Like if I have to ask, I want more challenge, they could find projects or situation where I could challenge myself and find those skills. But the problem that is, for me at least, giving me heartache or heavy in my heart that cause stress is after I have done what they said I would do to get to point B, when I finish those, there's nothing that, or they don't meet me in after I finish, they don't meet me in my finish line. I feel like I'm always alone in the finish line. And then when we talk about the development and promotion, it's like, oh, do this again, or do more. And how much more, right? Like how much more then for you to respond to my result. So development, and then that has been an issue. And from my experience, I really love my previous role. It's very heavy on research and I love it. The other example, besides development and promotion, is what not just me, but a lot of people have experienced this in the last, I don't know, couple of years, is workload. So when I started my role, didn't really realize how much work in this role. And so I feel like it's just too much, where I don't get to do things in my personal life that I get to do in my previous role. So I kind of miss my previous role nowadays because the personal aspect, right? Like I get to have work from home and anytime. I get to work from home anytime. I get to finish early, and so I have more time and I'm not exhausted. I still have the energy to do things after work and do anything I need to be done at home. I can be in a good mood, good health, not exhausted, doing my role as a wife and as a friend. I have the energy and time to still be able to serve my community. And those are the key things that I haven't done in the last 8 months because I just have too much on my plate at work. And even though I get to finish my work at 5, let's say, I don't have the energy anymore. I'm so exhausted. So I think that's where those are the things that challenge my mental health and well-being.
Looking at energy itself versus a schedule, because sometimes we're trying to impact our day so much that we feel so drained at the end of the day. But there are certain situations where perhaps when you have a meeting with 3 people, it's not as draining as a meeting with 1 person or vice versa. And really seeing and being in tune with yourself, where are you really spending your energy, and adjusting your schedule to that. Then of course, speaking up, I think feeling empowered and really having those hard conversations, which is really hard. And we all fear of being judged and so on. But if you are feeling that way, perhaps having a conversation with another executive, not directly your boss, or perhaps having a conversation with your coworker so they can guide you through the process and give you some tips how to have that hard conversation. And maybe, in that situation, seek support, a coach, a therapist, or somebody else who really could put the position from a neutral, being first of all in tune and with their employees on daily basis and really doing check-ins, having the mental day and having some type of initiative where people feel like they're able to speak up and perhaps create some type of in-house ability to talk with professionals that are doing it on daily basis versus talking to your boss that you might not feel really comfortable. So I think there's many things that employee can do. And I think I've mentioned briefly about the fact that sometimes, aligning your core values with the company core values is more important than actually getting the additional 10, 20 grants.
These structural challenges make it very difficult to keep any sort of work-life balance. But more importantly, to me, I think they cause people to feel a loss of autonomy and control over their work lives. There's also a tendency for silos to get created, even within large firms, and those silos create isolation and separation. And then finally, and this is more cultural than personality driven, but there's this image that we've all got to be superheroes. We've all got to be put on this mask that we're confident, we have all the answers, we know, we're there to solve problems, we're there to help. That mask, if we don't take it off when we go home, can start to really take a toll on us. Mental health and wellness is something that you need to work at, both individually and organizationally, and it's a constant process. It's very much a daily choice, and it's very much, I think people are now starting to understand leadership is starting to understand in law firms and even in other organizations that have in-house legal departments, or that prioritizing the mental health and wellness of people is not only the right thing to do, but it's actually good for business. And there's enough research out there now. There's a huge amount of research being developed that shows the benefits in terms of increased productivity, reduced absenteeism, reduced presenteeism If you have a healthy workforce, you're going to have a better business, a better organization. So it's the right thing to do, and it's good for business.
The biggest thing that jumps out at me when you ask me that is working for FaceTime. When you're not working for results, but you're working just to show that you're working and you're just phoning it in. And I felt like I've had jobs where the leaders did that. They expected you to do work for FaceTime, and I wasn't doing my best. I was just there to be a number. And the resentment that grew in me caused me to then have this cyclical effect of not performing well, of not rising up and meeting expectations. And I felt like, in hindsight, when I look back on that time of my life and my career, I realized it was very cyclical because it came from them. It came from the top. And I'm responsible for my own, my own self and my own impetus to work. So I take responsibility for my own actions, but I was clearly mirroring and modeling what I saw as a leader who was working for FaceTime. And I think that's a really dangerous place to be in, because as we've seen now, especially during the pandemic, you can be super productive from home. What matters is what you bring to the table and what you feel you're responsible for. And if you have support from the people you have to report to or work with, or that camaraderie that you have with your colleagues, your level of productivity goes up substantially, and you don't feel like you have to fake it, if that makes sense. I grew very resentful and didn't take care of myself. I became more of what is happening to me instead of what's happening for me mindset. I became this worker who was working to pay the bills. I wasn't working to challenge myself. I wasn't working to satisfy any passion or anything inside. I was just working because the man told me to. And I became that sort of resentful stereotype where I wasn't healthy. I wasn't serving myself. I wasn't serving my team. I wasn't serving my employees. I wasn't serving my leaders. And it affected the bottom line. And ultimately, it really affected my health. And I didn't sleep well. I didn't feel good. I didn't take care of myself. I gained a lot of weight. I just felt sluggish. It just sort of snowballed into this. All of a sudden, 2 years into it, I was like, who am I? I was a positive glass half full person before, and now what do they want me to do now? And had a really bad attitude. And it took a long time to retrain my mindset to not think that way anymore.
I think the way I've been challenged the most has been when I've joined organizations where those values haven't been aligned, but for whatever reason, I've really wanted to make it work as an employee. I once joined an organization where I could tell their idea of a healthy culture was very different from mine. However, there was enough about the job that was really, really appealing to me that I thought, I'm going to stick this out and make it work. What the challenge became for me was when there were no compromises being made on the other end. I would say things like, the drive from where I live to where the office is really difficult. It's 90 minutes each way in traffic. It's causing me to be very tired. It's causing me to just not really enjoy my life during the week at home. I have no energy to do anything. I'm not able to get my workouts in. You guys know I'm a triathlete. I have a workout in the evening. And then just not having that be heard when I kind of expected it would be. I kind of touched on it before, but another big challenge has been when promises have been made that just haven't been kept, and having to be this one employee with not much power in a massive, massive company and advocate for myself and remind people in powerful positions that they had made a promise and it's not being kept right now. That's a really scary position to be in, and it often backfires. And in my case, it has resulted in getting fired. It's resulted in leaving on bad terms with a company, but ultimately, I had to part ways because my mental health was suffering too much.
I have tended in the past to be drawn to kind of helping and serving professions where the roles I've been in sometimes take the brunt of people's frustrations. I've worked in situations around healthcare, especially for an aging parent or a sick kid, where there's just a lot of stress. And when people are in stress, they generally don't behave as well. So I think as someone who has typically been in helping and serving professions, the impacts to me are, I end up bearing the brunt of someone else's frustration when I didn't do anything directly to cause them to be frustrated. So I think that's just a human thing. I'm not sure how workplaces can change that, except to equip folks to understand what is theirs to own and what isn't, and how to meet someone else's frustration with that same empathy and concern that I called out a few minutes ago. But I think there's an internal dialogue that needs to happen around, just because someone is upset with me does not mean I've done something bad, or does not mean I've done something wrong. So I think equipping people to know what's theirs to own and what they need support around would be key. I don't know if we can get this granular, but they're like the book, The Four Agreements, is something I'm starting to work with. Just be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. I think those are key skills both for employers to foster and to celebrate and recognize, and then to talk about in the workplace. And then for employees, folks who are interested in those kinds of things to start the conversation as well. I think personality conflicts, one thing that came up just yesterday and today was the tone or the way in which people address things that aren't working. So I think there's an opportunity in general to establish, okay, when we enter into conflict, here's how we're going to navigate it in a way that's safe and respectful and productive.
I think that, across the board, many industries, I've worked in a lot of different types of industries. And when you feel like a number, you feel like just a cog in the wheel, whatever metaphor you want to use, anonymous. Does leadership know who I am? Do they know what I've contributed to the company? Feeling underappreciated, undervalued, not seen. And it doesn't mean that recognition is everything. It's not the driving force for employee well-being, but it matters, I think. And times when I felt recognition was lacking, or that it really didn't matter, the effort that I was putting in, from C-suite down to, peer level, that recognition or lack of communication, I would say, is another one. Maybe my direct manager was able to see me and appreciate me and work on developing me as an employee, but when it stopped there and it felt like there was a lid over my contributions, there was a disconnect there. And so I think just increasing connection, communication, and recognition for your employees is really, I think those are some of the key things that really enhance well-being at work and feeling, it minimizes any other kind of feelings of burnout or compassion fatigue if you feel like you're really contributing to something and being seen and recognized for it. I've definitely experienced burnout in past jobs, and a lot of times in helping professions too, we want to give, we want to do so much for the people we serve, our clients, our customers, our other employees. We want to do a good job, and we want to pour ourselves and our empathy into everything that we do. And oftentimes that gets overlooked by management, upper leadership, not calling attention to that, not calling attention to the fact that we are maybe feeling burned out or we see that there's a dip in engagement. What's happening with that? Why might that be happening? So not asking those questions from an upper management perspective, not tapping into or really listening to your employees' needs, whether that they're overt and, you know, very apparent, or if it's a little bit deeper, you know, that emotional intelligence, kind of tapping into that, you know, what's changed? Why are people not engaging on Slack? Why are they not signing up for this event? What do we need to do differently that maybe our needs were met, you know, in that one way in the past, but not so much in the present. And I think it's really important to make health and mental health a priority for your employees wherever you are. I've definitely felt the burnout when you don't have psychological safety to express those things in a company, to say, I love the work that I do, but something is off, or things are disconnecting, and I need to take a mental health day. Is that something that's allowed here? Knowing what's available to you and feeling that psychological safety to speak up and advocate for yourself, advocate for your team members when you are feeling burned out. So it's kind of cyclical, I would say. I think the first piece is, you know, again, you may feel psychological safety on your immediate team with your direct reports or, you know, direct managers. But is that psychological safety carried further than that? That's really where I think a lot of companies fall short. Getting that feedback, saying, we're seeing this, we're understanding and hearing your needs, and we're doing something about it. Here's what we've heard from you, and here's what we're offering, you know, in terms of a well-being strategy or doing something different to appreciate and recognize employees. Again, it's great to have that small bubble of psychological safety, but if it doesn't expand to the rest of the company in both directions, I think that's a key factor that a lot of companies can improve upon to really hone in on their employees' well-being and mental health.